One morning, I opened my investment account before heading to work and saw a number that didn't feel real. The balance had crossed $200,000. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, closed the app, and opened it again because I honestly thought there had been some kind of mistake. The strange thing, I wasn't a tech founder. I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't making $200,000 a year. I wasn't even making six figures. And that's exactly why this matters. Because millions of Americans believe wealth is created by high income alone. They believe the people building serious savings must have better jobs, bigger salaries, or some secret investment strategy nobody else knows about. But what if that's not true? What if the biggest difference between someone who reaches $200,000 before 30 and someone who reaches 30 with almost nothing saved isn't income at all? What if it's habits? Because every year, millions of Americans earn good money and still live paycheck to paycheck. Millions earn raises and somehow feel poor. Millions work harder but never move forward financially. And the scary part is that most people don't realize they're making expensive mistakes until years have already passed. Today, I'm going to show you the 10 frugal habits that quietly helped me build my first $200,000 before turning 30. None of them are exciting, none of them are flashy, and none of them will make you rich overnight. But together, they completely changed my financial future. My name is Noah, Investor Mind, and by the end of this video, you'll understand why some people spend their entire lives chasing money while others quietly build wealth in the background. Let's begin. The first habit wasn't investing, it wasn't budgeting, and it definitely wasn't making more money. It was learning to stop spending money before I even had the chance to touch it. Most people save whatever happens to be left at the end of the month. The problem is there is usually nothing left. Rent shows up, gas shows up, food shows up, subscriptions show up, unexpected expenses show up, and suddenly another month is gone. For years, Americans have been taught that saving money requires discipline, but discipline is unreliable. Some days you're motivated, some days you're tired, some days you just want to enjoy life. What changed everything for me was automation. The moment my paycheck arrived, a portion automatically moved into savings and investments before I could spend it. I treated saving like a bill, not an option, not a goal, a requirement. At first, it felt uncomfortable. My checking account looked smaller. I felt poor, but something surprising happened. Within a few months, I adjusted. My lifestyle adapted. I stopped missing money I never saw, and that single system quietly became the foundation of everything that followed. Because wealth doesn't start when you learn how to invest. It starts when you learn how to keep money long enough to invest it. The second habit sounds boring. Actually, it sounds so boring that most people ignore it completely. I drove an older car. In America, cars are emotional purchases. People buy cars to celebrate promotions. People buy cars to reward themselves. People buy cars to look successful. And dealerships know exactly how to sell that dream. A lower monthly payment, a longer loan, a newer model, a nicer interior. Before you know it, you're paying hundreds of dollars every month for something losing value every day. One of my coworkers bought a brand new truck shortly after getting promoted. Everyone loved it. People complimented him constantly. The truck looked amazing. But every month he sent hundreds of dollars to the bank. Insurance cost more, repairs cost more, registration cost more. Meanwhile, I drove a reliable used vehicle that nobody cared about. And honestly, that was the point. Nobody was impressed. But my investments were growing. While he was building a car payment, I was building ownership. And ownership eventually becomes freedom. A lot of people spend years trying to look wealthy. The irony is that actually becoming wealthy often looks boring. The third habit was something I learned after making a painful mistake. For almost a year, I ignored my employer's retirement match. I thought retirement was far away. I thought I had time. I thought I would focus on it later. Then one day, someone explained what I was doing. I was literally refusing free money. That realization hit hard. Imagine walking into work and your employer says, "For every dollar you save, we'll add extra money." Most people would immediately say yes, yet every year countless employees ignore retirement matching programs. The moment I understood this, I signed up, and every paycheck started working harder. The best part? I didn't need to earn more money. I simply stopped rejecting money already available to me. Sometimes wealth isn't about finding opportunities. It's about noticing opportunities already sitting in front of you. The fourth habit might be the hardest one on this list, because it attacks something most Americans never question: lifestyle inflation. Here's what usually happens. Someone earns $50,000. Then they get a raise. Now they earn $60,000. Instead of increasing savings, they increase spending. Better apartment, better phone, better vacations, better restaurants. Then another raise arrives, and spending rises again. Years later, they're earning more than ever, but somehow still struggling financially. I watch this happen constantly. Friends got promotions and immediately upgraded their lives. I made a different decision. Whenever my income increased, I increased investments first, not after spending. Before spending, that simple rule changed everything. Every raise became a wealth-building tool instead of a spending opportunity. And over time, the gap became enormous. Because lifestyle inflation is sneaky. It doesn't feel dangerous, it feels deserved. That's why so many people fall into the trap. The fifth habit involved housing. And this is where many financial plans succeed or fail. Housing is usually the largest monthly expense for most Americans. Yet people rarely question how much they're spending. I had friends renting apartments they could barely afford because they wanted luxury amenities, pools, gyms, rooftop lounges, fancy locations. Everything looked impressive. But every month, huge portions of their income disappeared. I chose differently. For years, I lived below what I could technically afford. Not because I enjoyed sacrificing, but because I understood something important. Every extra dollar spent on housing was a dollar that couldn't work for me elsewhere. A larger apartment might impress visitors, but investments create options. Investments create security. Investments create freedom. Nobody sees those things immediately, but eventually they become impossible to ignore. One of the biggest misconceptions about wealth is believing that rich people spend more on everything. Many actually spend strategically. They understand which expenses grow their future and which expenses only grow appearances. And that brings us to habit number 6, food. Now, before you think I'm about to tell you never to eat out again, relax. That's not realistic. Life should still be enjoyable. But there is a huge difference between intentional spending and automatic spending. For years, I noticed something. Whenever I was tired, stressed, or busy, I spent more money on food, delivery apps, takeout, convenience purchases, little expenses that felt harmless, until I added them up. That's when reality hit. Hundreds of dollars every month, thousands every year, money disappearing without creating any lasting value. So I changed the default. Instead of deciding whether to cook, I decided whether eating out was worth breaking the routine. That shift sounds small, but it changed everything. Because success in personal finance often comes from changing defaults. The easier something becomes, the more likely you are to repeat it. And repeated actions eventually become habits. Habits become lifestyles. And lifestyles create financial outcomes. The 7th habit might have saved me more money than almost anything else. I stopped buying things immediately. Every purchase over a certain amount entered what I called the waiting zone. Nothing complicated, just time. Whenever I wanted something, I waited. Sometimes 48 hours, sometimes a week, sometimes longer. What I discovered shocked me. Most things I desperately wanted disappeared from my mind completely. The excitement faded, the urgency vanished, and suddenly I realized I never actually needed the item. I only wanted the feeling associated with buying it. Retailers understand human psychology extremely well. They know urgency creates sales. That's why everything feels limited, exclusive, ending soon, last chance. But most financial mistakes happen in emotional moments. Waiting removes emotion, and once emotion leaves, logic usually returns. One of the strangest things about modern life is how easy it is to spend money without noticing. Years ago, spending required effort. You physically handed over cash. You felt the transaction. Today, money leaves your account quietly while you're sleeping. Streaming services, premium subscriptions, apps, memberships, cloud storage, digital products, monthly renewals. Most Americans have at least a few charges hitting their accounts every month that they barely think about anymore. And that's exactly why companies love subscription models, because people rarely cancel. I remember sitting down one Saturday morning and reviewing 3 months of bank statements. At first, I expected to find very little. Instead, I found dozens of small charges. Some were only $5, others were $10 or $15. None seemed important individually, but together, they were costing me hundreds of dollars every year. Money that wasn't improving my life, money I wasn't enjoying, money I barely remembered spending. That experience taught me something important. Wealth isn't only built by making big decisions. It's also built by noticing small leaks. Imagine trying to fill a bucket while tiny holes drain water from the bottom. You can pour faster. You can work harder. You can earn more. But until the leaks are fixed, progress stays slow. So every few months I performed a financial audit. Not because I enjoyed it, but because every dollar recovered was another employee working for my future. Most people focus on increasing income. Very few focus on reducing waste. The combination of both is powerful, because every dollar you don't waste becomes a dollar you can invest. And invested dollars have a habit of multiplying. Which brings us to the habit that completely changed how I thought about spending. When most people buy something, they focus on price. I used to do the same thing. The cheapest option looked like the smartest option. But over time, I realized cheap and frugal are not the same thing. Cheap focuses on today's cost. Frugal focuses on total cost. That's a huge difference. For example, I once bought a pair of inexpensive shoes because they seemed like a bargain. Within months, they were falling apart. Then I bought another pair, and another. By the end of 2 years, I had spent more replacing cheap shoes than I would have spent buying quality ones. The lesson was simple. Some purchases deserve investment, not because they're luxurious, but because they're used constantly. Good shoes, a quality mattress, reliable tools, durable work equipment, things you touch every day, things that directly affect your health, comfort, productivity, or income. Meanwhile, there were plenty of things I stopped caring about completely. Brand names, status purchases, trend-driven products, items designed mainly to impress strangers. Because eventually I realized something uncomfortable. Most people spend a fortune trying to impress people who aren't paying attention. Think about the average person walking through a shopping mall. Everyone is focused on their own life, their own problems, their own goals. Yet countless financial decisions are made because we imagine someone else cares. The reality, almost nobody does. The moment I stopped spending for approval and started spending for value, my finances improved dramatically because value creates long-term benefits. Status creates short-term attention, and short-term attention is incredibly expensive. That habit alone changed the way I approached almost every purchase. But the final habit might have been the most important of all, not because it saved the most money, but because it kept me motivated long enough to reach $200,000. Most financial journeys fail for one reason. People expect dramatic results too quickly. They save for 3 months. Nothing changes. They invest for 6 months. Nothing exciting happens. They cut expenses for a year. Still no dramatic transformation. So they quit. The problem is that wealth compounds slowly at first, very slowly, painfully slowly. In the beginning, progress feels invisible. Imagine planting a tree. You water it, protect it, care for it. Weeks pass. Nothing impressive happens. Months pass. Still not much. If you judge success too early, you'll assume nothing is working. But beneath the surface, roots are growing. The same thing happens financially. When I started investing, my account growth felt disappointing. The first $1,000 seemed to take forever. The first $10,000 felt impossible. The first $50,000 felt distant. The first $100,000 looked like a fantasy. But something fascinating happened. Each milestone arrived faster than the last. Because eventually your money starts helping you. At first, you're doing all the work. Later, your investments begin contributing too. Then compounding enters the picture. And that's when everything changes. The first time my investments earned more in a year than I personally contributed, I understood why wealthy people talk about compounding with so much excitement. Because compounding is unlike anything else. A dollar earns money, then that money earns money, again and again. Year after year, quietly, patiently, without attention, without effort, without drama. Most people underestimate what can happen over 5 years. They massively underestimate what can happen over 10, and they completely underestimate what can happen over 20. That's why tracking progress mattered so much. Every month I checked one number, not daily, not obsessively, just once. My net worth, everything I owned minus everything I owed. That number became my scoreboard. Some months it barely moved. Some months it moved backward. But over time, the trend became undeniable. Upward, slowly at first, then steadily, then powerfully. And eventually that upward trend led me to a moment I'll never forget. One ordinary morning, one ordinary day, one ordinary account balance, $200,000. The funny thing is that reaching $200,000 didn't suddenly transform my life. I didn't feel rich. I didn't quit my job. I didn't buy a luxury car. I didn't celebrate with a massive purchase. What changed wasn't my lifestyle. What changed was my confidence. For the first time, I knew the system worked. I knew wealth wasn't reserved for special people. I knew financial success wasn't about luck. It wasn't about intelligence. It wasn't about finding some secret investment nobody else knew. It was about behavior. Repeated behavior. The same behavior practiced over and over again. That's why I want you to understand something important. The goal of this video was never really about $200,000. The number sounds impressive, but the number isn't the lesson. The lesson is that financial freedom starts long before the account balance becomes impressive. It starts with one decision, then another, then another. Most people are waiting for a life-changing opportunity, a huge raise, a lucky break, a perfect investment, a miracle. Meanwhile, wealth is usually being built by people doing ordinary things consistently. They're saving before spending, living below their means, avoiding lifestyle inflation, investing regularly, ignoring short-term noise, making decisions based on long-term outcomes instead of short-term emotions. None of those habits are exciting, but excitement rarely creates wealth. Consistency does. And that's the biggest misconception in personal finance. People think wealth comes from one giant decision. In reality, it usually comes from thousands of small ones. Looking back, I don't remember every investment contribution. I don't remember every budget decision. I don't remember every dollar saved. What I remember is the habit, the identity, the mindset, the decision to stop acting rich and start becoming wealthy. Because there is a difference. One spends money to create an image. The other builds assets to create freedom. One focuses on appearances. The other focuses on ownership. One seeks validation. The other seeks security. And over enough years, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. So if you're watching this today feeling behind financially, remember this. You don't need to make six figures. You don't need a perfect investment strategy. You don't need extraordinary luck. You don't need to know everything. You simply need to start. Start with one habit, one improvement, one better decision, then repeat it. Because the people who eventually reach financial freedom are rarely the people making dramatic moves. They're usually the people making smart moves repeatedly. And one day, often when they least expect it, they open an account, see a number they once thought was impossible, and realize that every small decision mattered, every sacrifice mattered, every contribution mattered, every habit mattered. And that's the moment they understand a truth most people spend decades missing. Wealth is rarely built quickly, but it is built quietly. And if you're willing to stay patient long enough, those quiet habits can completely change your future.